Have you ever walked into a room and felt like no one even noticed? Not because you wanted to be the center of attention, just because you wanted to exist. You speak, but somehow, the words don't land. Your voice doesn't echo. Your presence feels optional. And maybe you've told yourself, they're just busy. They didn't mean to interrupt. That's just how people are. But deep down, something twists in your gut. A cold emptiness settles in your chest. Like you're slowly fading into background noise. You start questioning yourself. Am I not important enough? Why does no one take me seriously? Why do I have to raise my voice just to be heard? Let me tell you something that might sting. Because it should. You've been teaching people to ignore you. You didn't mean to, but you did. Every time you let someone talk over you without correction. Every time you smiled when you were uncomfortable. Every time you told yourself it's fine when it clearly wasn't. You broadcasted something. Not in words, in energy, in posture, in the tiny signals your body screams before your voice ever speaks. And the world, it listens. It reinforces. It learns how to treat you by how you treat yourself. You don't have a confidence problem. You have a respect script problem, written in the subconscious language of learned helplessness, emotional silence, and blurry boundaries. And unless you rewrite it, you will keep attracting the same social outcome, invisibility. That's not harsh. It's biology, behavioral reinforcement, neuroplasticity, trauma imprints. Your brain has been conditioned to associate passivity with safety. But safety has a cost, and that cost is your presence. Let me be very clear. This is not about becoming loud, not about being aggressive. It's about learning to occupy space, internally, emotionally, socially. It's about rewiring your behavior so that your very existence commands attention without begging for it. Because here's the brutal truth. Respect is not something others give. It's something you generate. It's summoned. Through rituals, through emotional clarity, through the way you breathe when tension rises. And yes, it can be built. Yes, your brain can reprogram this, step by step, synapse by synapse. So if you're tired of shrinking, tired of feeling invisible even in full rooms, tired of whispering your needs to a world that only responds to clarity, then stay here. Because what we're about to uncover isn't surface-level advice. It's not another just be confident speech. It's a confrontation with the shadow you've been avoiding, and a reconstruction of the presence you've been silently craving. You're not too soft. You're not too sensitive. You've just been trained to disappear. Let's untrain that. Let's rebuild. Not louder, just undeniable. You probably think you're just being polite. You wait your turn to speak. You let the interruption slide. You tell yourself, it's not worth making a scene. But here's what's really happening. Each of those moments, tiny, quiet, forgettable, is a brick. And over time, you've built invisible walls around yourself. Walls that mute your presence. Walls that teach others to overlook you. You've been conditioned to mistake silence for peace. But silence, when it comes from fear, not clarity, is just a signal. And people read it. That nod you gave when someone dismissed your idea, that tight smile when they talked over you, it didn't go unnoticed. It was reinforcement. B.F. Skinner showed that even subtle responses, smiles, eye contact, withdrawal, shape behavior through reinforcement loops. And the harsh truth? You've been reinforcing your own erasure. Not because you're weak, because your nervous system learned a long time ago that staying small felt safer. That blending in was smarter than standing tall. That discomfort was easier than conflict. But here's the cost. You've trained the room not to respect you. And I know, none of this was conscious. It's not like you wanted to disappear. But invisibility doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. It's silent. It happens one unspoken no at a time. And eventually you start to believe maybe this is just who you are. The quiet one, the observer, the easygoing one. But what if that's not true? What if you've just been responding to micro-dismissions for so long that your body no longer believes it's allowed to take up space? Let that sink in. Your posture shrinks without you noticing. Your voice loses weight before it even leaves your mouth. You anticipate being ignored, and so you present yourself in a way that makes it easier for others to do just that. And the reinforcement continues. Here's the brutal part. People rarely question the roles we assign ourselves. If you show up as invisible, they assume that's who you are. And without realizing it, they keep reinforcing your disappearance. But this isn't fixed. You're not locked into this role. The first step? Notice the patterns. Catch the moments you flinch when you should stand. Track the phrases you use to soften your truth. Feel the weight in your chest when you hold back something important. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about seeing yourself clearly, because only then can you interrupt the script. Respect doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins in the micro moments you've been overlooking. Moments where your nervous system whispers, "Don't rock the boat," and your soul quietly replies, "But I don't want to drown either." And that leads us to something deeper, the illusion of boundaries. You may think you've been setting them, but if your no comes wrapped in apology, if your eyes drop when you say it, if your voice trembles with fear of rejection, then the message isn't strength, it's softness mistaken for surrender. Let's break that illusion. You probably think you've set boundaries. You've said no before. You've told people when something bothered you. You've even walked away from toxic situations. But here's what's really happening. You're drawing lines in sand, not stone, and they vanish the moment someone steps close enough to test them. The illusion of boundaries is dangerous because it convinces you that you're protected while you're still exposed. You feel drained after every interaction, but can't quite explain why. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you were too harsh or not firm enough. That tension in your chest, that knot behind your eyes after saying "it's fine" when it wasn't. That's the emotional tax of boundaries that never rooted. According to Dr. Gabor Mate, early trauma doesn't always leave visible scars. It shows up in the ways we fail to protect ourselves. When your nervous system was trained to prioritize connection over authenticity, saying no feels like betrayal, not to them, to you. So instead of a clean boundary, you give a blurred signal, a maybe masked as a no, a silence that screams discomfort but invites continuation, and people feel it. They read it, not consciously, but they sense it in your tone, your body, your eyes, and without clarity they'll default to their own needs, not yours. This isn't your fault, it's programming, but now that you see it, it's your responsibility. Here's a brutal truth. A boundary that comes with guilt isn't a boundary, it's an invitation to be tested, to be pushed, to be ignored again. So how do you change that? It starts with what I call the 3-step reset. Step 1, the clean no. No explanation, no apology, just the word, held with breath and spine. If your body shakes, let it. That's release, not weakness. Step 2, and I want. Don't just reject what doesn't work. State what you do want. I'm not available tonight, and I want time to reset. Clear, self-owned, anchored. Step 3, meta-boundary reflection. After every boundary you attempt to set, reflect. Not on whether they respected it, but whether you did. Did you flinch, over-explain, soften? Your real work isn't in controlling others. It's in rewiring your own response to discomfort. Because boundaries aren't about walls. They're about edges. Edges that teach the world how to engage with you. And once you start practicing this, something powerful happens. Your nervous system starts to relax. You stop bracing for violation because your voice, posture, and presence begin to hold the line before your words do. It's not perfection, it's practice. And each time you hold firm, even with shaky hands, you rewrite a script that told you to disappear. But to fully step into that space, you have to face the parts of yourself you've abandoned to be liked. And that leads us to something deeper. The part of you that sabotages your own respect because you don't believe you deserve it. You've been doing the work. You've started saying no. You've been trying to hold your line, but some part of it still feels fragile. Like no matter how clear you speak, something underneath betrays you. And that leads us to the part most people never face. Your shadow. Carl Jung called it the hidden self, the collection of thoughts, feelings, desires you disown to be accepted. It's not evil. It's not broken. It's just the part of you you're ashamed to show. And here's the brutal truth. That's the part that's leaking into your behavior, sabotaging your presence, and silently telling the world, I don't fully respect myself. You see it in flashes. You get cut off in a conversation and you freeze. Not because you don't have something to say, but because your inner voice whispers, don't make it worse. Or you speak up, but your tone is sharp, defensive. You try to project authority, but it lands as tension because it's not grounded. It's armor, not ownership. That's your shadow speaking. And ironically, the traits you hate most in others the arrogance, the aggression, the need to dominate, are often the exact traits you're afraid to integrate in yourself. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that confidence looked too much like cruelty. That power always came with punishment. That to be kind, you had to stay small. But kindness without boundaries becomes self-erasure, and presence without shadow becomes performative. Here's what most people get wrong. You don't earn respect by denying the parts of yourself that feel too much. You earn it by facing them, integrating them, and deciding how they get to show up. Your internal critic, the one that tells you you're too intense, too quiet, too needy, too cold, that voice is often more disrespectful than anything the outside world ever said. So the work isn't just outward. It's not about changing how people see you. It's about shifting the internal gaze. Start here. Notice the traits you despise in others. Now ask, where do I reject that in myself? Feel the physical tension that rises when someone challenges you. Instead of shrinking or overcompensating, breathe, ground, feel your feet, respond, don't react, and most of all, talk to your shadow, not to silence it, but to invite it into your authority, because honoring your darkness doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you whole. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be real, and realness is magnetic. Respect doesn't just come from clarity, it comes from congruence. When your voice, your posture, and your energy say the same thing, I see all of me, and I'm not afraid to stand in it. Now we begin to rewire the nervous system, not just to hold respect, but to generate it through new neural pathways, new rituals, and daily behavioral change. We go to the brain, because transformation isn't just emotional, it's neurological. You've faced the shadow. You've started noticing the ways you sabotage your own presence, how your nervous system whispers, play it safe, even when everything in you wants to rise. But insight isn't enough. Awareness without action just becomes another layer of guilt. So let's shift. Let's talk about rewiring, because the way you've been showing up isn't a personality flaw. It's a pattern, and patterns are plastic. Andrew Huberman's research on neuroplasticity is clear. The brain doesn't care about what's true. It cares about what's repeated, and what you repeat, daily, emotionally, physically, becomes the script your body follows without asking. So if you want to be respected, seen, and taken seriously, you need to teach your brain what respect feels like before the world ever gives it to you. That starts with exposure, not to chaos, to discomfort. Micro discomforts that signal safety isn't the only priority anymore. Truth is, because here's the brutal truth. Your brain has been trained to associate stillness with survival, but survival isn't the goal anymore. Presence is. So how do you retrain that? Start small, not flashy, not performative, just real. Tool 1. Speak into space. Every day, record yourself speaking for 30 seconds about anything, but say it like you mean it, not as a performance, as a declaration. This isn't content, it's calibration. Your voice carries more than sound. It carries your identity. And if you never hear yourself speak with clarity, how can others? Tool 2. Posture before cognition. Before you walk into any room, reset your body. Back straight, eyes forward, breath low. This tells your nervous system, we're safe here, we're allowed to exist. Because how you hold yourself holds your future. Tool 3. Visualization with friction, not the glossy kind. Visualize a moment where you normally fold. Someone interrupting you, dismissing your idea, testing your no. Now imagine holding your ground, breathing, pausing, responding with clarity. Feel the sweat, feel the shaking, then feel the power on the other side. Repetition wires reality, and even imagined resistance changes the nervous system's tolerance for tension. But here's what most people get wrong. They wait to feel confident before they act confident. That's backwards. Confidence is a consequence, not a prerequisite. Neuroplasticity means your brain follows what you do, not what you intend. So act like someone who respects themselves long before you believe it. That's not fake. That's training. And over time, those actions accumulate, not as a mask, as a new internal baseline. Presence stops being a performance. It becomes your default. You stop entering rooms hoping to be accepted and start entering as someone who's already chosen themselves. But this shift isn't just physical or cognitive, it's emotional. And the next step is mastering the pause between trigger and reaction, the moment where authority is born. Next, we learn to pause powerfully, Because silence, when intentional, speaks louder than force. You've begun to act differently. You're standing taller. Your voice doesn't tremble as much. Your nervous system is catching up to your new script. But there's still one moment that keeps pulling you back. The moment right before you speak. The tension, the flood of thoughts, the pulse that jumps in your neck. And then, you say too much or too little or nothing at all. This isn't about words. It's about regulation. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on emotional granularity reveals something powerful. The more precisely you can sense and name your emotional state, the more control you have over your behavior. In other words, clarity creates authority. But here's what's really happening when you feel disrespected and freeze. Your system gets hijacked by emotion you haven't practiced identifying. You feel heat, but call it anger. You feel tension, but call it fear. And without precision, you default to survival habits. Appease, retreat, or explode. This is where the micropause comes in. A single breath of space between feeling and responding. It sounds simple. It's not. Because in that half-second gap, your identity is recalibrating. It's the moment where you usually reach for the familiar, the automatic apology, the anxious laugh, the self-correction before they even push back. But when you practice the micropause, something else happens. You stay in your body. You don't rush to fill the silence. You don't abandon yourself just to make others comfortable. That stillness, that's power. Because people don't just hear your words. They read your timing. They feel whether your response is rehearsed, reactive, or rooted. And rooted responses are magnetic. They make others lean in. They create space for respect to form, without force. Here's how to begin. Step 1. Catch the charge. The moment you feel heat rise, tighten your jaw, or your breath gets shallow, label it. Not with judgment, with curiosity. Step 2. Pause. One deep breath. No rush to fix, prove, or defend. Let the space settle around you like armor. Step 3. Choose. Respond from clarity, not fear. Sometimes that means saying less, sometimes more, but always from center. This isn't easy. It's a daily practice. But the rewards are exponential. You stop sounding like you're convincing. You start sounding like you're remembering who you are. You stop defending your boundaries like a cornered animal. You start embodying them like someone who knows they're not up for negotiation. And here's the deeper shift. Micropausing doesn't just train others to listen. It teaches you to trust your own emotional landscape. That trust? That's the foundation of real presence. But emotional presence isn't the full story. It's time to talk about the paradox you've been avoiding. The one that says you have to open to earn respect. Not by bleeding, but by showing that real strength is never afraid to feel. Next, we step into vulnerability. Not as weakness, but as the deepest form of power. You've learned to pause, to breathe through the heat, to stop reacting, and start responding. But there's still one question echoing in your mind. If I let people see how I really feel, will they still respect me? We're taught that vulnerability is dangerous, that showing emotion will get you dismissed, that soft equals weak. But here's what's really happening. You're confusing exposure with collapse, and that confusion is costing you real authority. Brené Brown's work on vulnerability shattered a myth most of us live inside. That power means being untouchable. In reality, the people who command the most respect aren't the ones who hide their emotions. They're the ones who can hold them without breaking. Think about it. When someone shares a hard truth with calm clarity, no drama, no flinching, you lean in, don't you? It feels different. It feels real. That's the paradox. You thought your mask made you stronger, but it made you forgettable. Because here's the brutal truth. Nobody respects perfection. They respect congruence. When your face says I'm fine, but your voice trembles, people don't trust what you say. But when your face, your voice, your energy all align, even in sadness, even in discomfort, it lands as strength. That's not emotional leakage. That's emotional mastery. So how do you step into that paradox? Start here. 1. Reveal with intention. Not everything needs to be shared, but what is shared should be clear, clean, and chosen. Saying I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, so I need a moment, holds more authority than pretending nothing's wrong. 2. Feel without flooding. Let yourself feel in real time, not in delayed explosions. A visible breath, a steady tone, a quiet, "this matters to me," lands louder than shouting ever could. 3. Reclaim emotional language. Say what's true without the apology. I care deeply about this. This boundary protects my energy. No defense, no justification, just truth. When you do this, something shifts. You stop performing strength. You start embodying it, and people feel that. Respect follows it. Here's the deeper shift. You no longer need to convince anyone of your worth, because vulnerability without collapse sends one signal. I trust myself to hold this. That kind of presence, steady, open, grounded, is rare. It doesn't demand space, it invites it. And the moment people sense that invitation, they stop testing your limits. They start respecting your frame. But don't mistake this for the finish line, because if you want this transformation to last, you can't rely on emotion alone. You need to understand how social reinforcement works, how people learn how to treat you based on your responses, your feedback, your energy over time. Next, we return to Skinner, not to survive your environment, but to shape it. You've stopped hiding behind perfection. You've begun to speak from center instead of fear. And as you start showing up more authentically, you'll notice something strange. People shift. Some lean in, some pull back, and some test you. Because here's what's really happening. You're not just rewriting your internal script, you're disrupting theirs. And like any system that's been running on autopilot, it resists change at first. This is where B.F. Skinner's work on reinforcement becomes critical, not just for understanding your behavior, but for shaping how others behave toward you. You've likely heard of reinforcement in terms of habit formation, but social reinforcement is subtler and far more powerful. Every reaction you give, every glance, nod, withdrawal, smile, silence, is feedback, and people learn from it. When you ignore a boundary violation with a nervous laugh, you reward the disrespect. When you over-explain your no, you reinforce that your decisions are negotiable. When you shut down to avoid tension, you teach others they won. You don't mean to, but your nervous system is fluent in survival, not sovereignty. So how do you flip the loop? You become intentional with your feedback. You reinforce what you want more of and starve what you don't. This isn't about controlling people. It's about training reality to respond to your presence with respect. Here's how to begin. 1. Catch what lands. When someone respects your space, listens without interrupting, or honors your no, acknowledge it. A simple thank you for that can go further than you think. Reinforcement doesn't need fireworks, just consistency. 2. Starve the patterns. Stop feeding what you want to disappear. Don't reward passive aggression with a smile. Don't match dismissiveness with overcompensation. Your stillness is a boundary in itself. 3. Design your rhythm. Create rituals that remind your system. I don't chase. I calibrate. This can be as subtle as a pause before you reply, as steady as maintaining eye contact when you say something that matters. When you do this, something clicks. You stop reacting and start shaping, not just within yourself, but in your environment. And people start to notice. Your energy says, this is a space where respect lives. And those who can't meet that frequency, they either rise or leave. This is where real confidence begins, not in being loud, but in being selective. You're no longer signaling availability to every stimulus. You're teaching the world what gets access and what doesn't. But here's the deeper truth. You've become your own reinforcement loop. Each time you show up aligned, you validate yourself. And that internal validation builds more than self-esteem. It builds gravity. People feel it. They respond to it, not because you demand respect, but because you embody what it looks like. Still, presence alone isn't enough. If you want to be undeniable, you need more than clarity. You need consistency, anchored in behavior, ritual, and repetition. Next, we ritualize everything you've learned, so that respect doesn't just follow you, it becomes who you are. You've stopped shrinking. You've started choosing your reactions. You've stepped into clarity, congruence, and emotional power. Now comes the part that most people skip, the part that cements the change. Because here's what's really happening. Your nervous system is still watching you. Every morning, every interaction, every pause. And if you don't give it something stable to hold on to, it will default to the old version of you. Quiet, apologetic, invisible. That's why we don't end with insight. We end with ritual. Ritual isn't routine. Routine is mechanical, forgettable, disposable. Ritual is sacred repetition. It tells your mind and body, this matters. I matter. Aristotle believed that we are what we repeatedly do. B.F. Skinner showed that repeated action shapes both outcome and identity. Together, they remind us, if you want to be respected, you have to practice being someone who respects themselves, day after day. So here's your framework. Ritual 1, morning posture. Reset before you touch your phone, before you speak to anyone. Stand still, feet grounded, spine long, eyes steady. Breathe into your chest like you belong in your own life, because you do. This isn't for show, it's for reprogramming. You're teaching your body what presence feels like before the world gets a say. Ritual 2, voice warm-up. Not for performance, for ownership. Speak 3 sentences aloud, every morning. Not affirmations, declarations. I speak with weight. My words matter. I do not disappear. Feel the vibration in your throat. Own the sound. If you don't believe yourself, no one else will. Ritual 3, 1 assertive conversation. Per day, big or small. A boundary, a preference, a truth. Say something that honors your clarity, even if your voice shakes. The more you speak from alignment, the more alignment becomes your language. And here's what happens when you do this for 7 days. You stop performing presence. You become presence. Respect no longer feels like a prize you're chasing. It becomes the natural response to your energy. This is the moment of transformation, the moment when the version of you who used to shrink, who over-explained, who begged silently to be seen, looks back and says, "Thank you for not giving up on me." And maybe today you're still in the process, still holding back, still questioning. That's okay. You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You just need to meet yourself differently, once a day. Because this isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world convinced you to play small. Every ritual you commit to is a vote for the real you. Every pause, every breath, every boundary held with grace. You're not chasing power. You're stepping back into it. And the more you live like someone who respects themselves, the more the world reflects it back. This is your new broadcast. Clear, calm, undeniable. And now, you're no longer invisible. You're unforgettable. Let's carry that into what comes next. Because presence is just the beginning. Power is built in the life you choose to live from here. Let's be honest. You didn't start this journey because you wanted more attention. You started it because you were tired. Tired of being overlooked. Tired of feeling invisible even in the rooms you've earned your place in. Tired of whispering truths while the world rewarded those who roared lies. Tired of the ache in your chest every time you made yourself smaller just to keep the peace. And somewhere deep down, you knew. This wasn't about being liked. This was about being seen. Fully, clearly, truthfully. But here's what you never realized until now. You were never broken. You were just rehearsing a version of yourself that the world trained you to perform. A version that made others comfortable. A version that didn't ask for much. A version that was easy to ignore. And the moment you began to interrupt that pattern, when you paused before reacting, when you set a boundary with a calm no, when you allowed your shadow to rise without shame, something shifted. Not in them, in you. Because presence isn't volume. It's not posture. It's not charisma. Presence is the felt energy of someone who's decided to come back to themselves. And now you've done that. Not perfectly, not permanently, but consciously. You've stepped out of survival mode and into self-respect. You've stopped apologizing for existing. You've started designing the way the world meets you. That changes everything. You've learned to train your nervous system to hold clarity. You've practiced rituals that root you in quiet power. You've rewired the loop from invisibility to influence. And now, you don't just demand respect, you radiate it. But let me say this clearly. This is not a one-time fix. This is a life you return to. One choice, one breath, one boundary at a time. So here's what you do now. Begin your respect reset. 7 days, 7 micro practices. You don't need a full reinvention. You just need repetition with intention. If you want it structured, I've built it for you. It's free and it's yours. Share this with someone who's dimmed their light to survive. Because silence is contagious, but so is courage. And the world needs more people who choose truth over comfort. Subscribe if this spoke to you. Not for the numbers, but because this space is your mirror. Every video, every reflection, every tool is designed to help you rebuild from within, on your terms. And one final thing. If no one ever taught you how to own your space, if no one modeled what quiet confidence looks like, if no one ever said this to you before, let me be the first. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were just waiting for the day you'd stop editing yourself to be tolerated and start embodying yourself to be respected. That day was today. And tomorrow, you walk in as someone who doesn't need permission to take up space. You're not invisible anymore. You're undeniable, and this is just the beginning.